tells me, it's like, bam, I'm on. You know, it's like, so if she doesn't want it done until the middle of November, she tells me on the 14th, this is what I want done.
I so envy you and guys like you, Tim. I just have not. I don't even have spatial vision.
Well, see that you have that vision of when you're teaching the word. You can tell stories about the word. It goes through your mind, and all sorts of extra things come up and through.
Yeah.
And me, I have to have everything. 1 plus 1 is 2. You know, and that's all I can think. That's as far as I can go. You know, I can't expand on that. And that's the beautiful thing about a great teacher is that they can expand on the information and make the information interesting to their audience.
My carpenter, who I only met a month ago, he's already figured that out. He'll explain something, of course, my house is covered with that tie back.
Yeah.
So he's talking and he says, climb up here on the porch. Goes over to one of the old spots up there. He starts drawing pictures. This is what I'm talking about.
So you're putting vinyl siding all the way to the ground then?
No, because of the way the house is, and there's so much space, because they took so much topsoil off in the building, so I'll have a lot of bricks and rocks. So they put a border on, and the only place is going to come straight down where you can't put any veneer is on the porch. But on either side, between the border of the siding and the ground, there'll be room for that veneer. Right. Oh. Man, that was loud. Why am I shouting? Okay. Matt, he'll turn me down after I get started. We're going to start in chapter 3. I didn't have any notes for that, but we're going to start in chapter 3 and we'll just wing it. And then we'll go from there. So join me in a word of prayer. Father and God, we're so grateful this evening for the wonderful meal that we had provided for us, and now for what's been provided in your word. For this is the feast that is made ready for us this evening. And the chef, the author, the Holy Spirit is just waiting to be invited in, so he can speak to us concerning all that is found in this scripture. May we invite him, gracious to him, listen to him. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. Can't believe it, but I know this story, so we can start here. So let's begin chapter 3. And last week we left off with Hazael, that swift young man that got murdered by Abner. And Tim, would you read the first 5 verses, please?
David grew stronger and stronger while the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. Sons were born to David, Hebron. His firstborn was Amnon, the son of Ahinoam of Jezreel. His second, Eliab, the son of Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. The third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. The fourth, Adonijah, the
Close.
son of Hagiah.
Yeah.
The fifth, Sephiah, the son of Aphiah. And the sixth, Ithream, the son of David's wife, Eglah. These were born to David in Hebron.
Some of those names will be familiar to you. Ammon was the one that raped his sister Tamar. Absalom is the one that led up a coup against his dad. Adonijah was the last one to try and assume the throne that Solomon eventually defeated. So the word war isn't necessarily like we're thinking of a civil war. It was more of a faction between the 10 northern tribes and the 2 southern tribes, and they just couldn't find any commonality. They just disagreed about everything. Kind of like Republicans and Democrats. They don't really beat each other up, at least we hope not. But they just have these disagreements. So, Renee, would you read verses 6 through 11? Okay. Ishbosheth is the fourth and final living son of Saul. He's not a king, but he's got that title. Abner sees an opportunity to become king. And he's going to do it through Ishbosheth, without Ishbosheth knowing. And as it played out, David kept growing stronger just because God was blessing him. And Ishbosheth and that northern group of Judaizers, Israelites, what am I thinking? They can't get any stronger because they're so attacking each other all the time. So, in that culture, one of the signs that you had assumed the position of the king before you was to sleep with the king's concubine. And so Abner thought, Abner didn't think somehow or another it got brought up that Abner was sleeping with this concubine. It doesn't say he did, doesn't say he didn't. But Ishbosheth takes that hearsay, man, it gets you in trouble all the time. he takes that hearsay and he says, what are you doing? Are you trying to make a play for the kingship by sleeping with my dad's concubine? Because if anybody's going to sleep with her, it's going to be me. Well, Abner is offended by that. An accusation, maybe wrongfully made. But he says in verse 8, you know, I can't believe you would accuse me of something like that. I have been your ally. I have been your supporter. I've been your friend. I am the one that is holding off David's kingdom. And then in verse 9, it's a funny way to phrase it, because Abner is doing the talking, but he puts himself in third person. May God do so to Abner. That's you, Abner. You're the one talking. May God do so to me, is what he should have said. Well, that's how Americans talk. But there they said, may God do so to Abner if I don't accomplish this for David. I'm going to transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul to the house of David. And that was a power pack. We're talking about 10 tribes. Abner thinks he's got that kind of power. Ishbosheth is a weak person to begin with, and now he's afraid to even talk to Abner because Abner seems like a really mean person. And I don't know why he's so upset. I just accused him of sleeping with my dad's concubine. I mean, you know, get over it. That was a pretty severe accusation. Hi. Would you please read? Oh, this is good. Would you please read 12 through 16? Mm-hmm.
The son of Lish. But her husband went with her, weeping as he went, and followed her as far as Bahurim. Then Abner said to him, go, return. And so he returned.
Okay. Verse 12, would you read that, please? You skipped over that. Yes. Abner says to David, look, whose land is this? It's God's land. And we're just messing it up by having these two groups when we could be so much more powerful if we had just one. So what if I give you the 10 northern tribes? And David said, good. That's how you said that, right? David said, good. But I want one thing. And they've debated for hundreds, thousands of years what he wanted. He wasn't in love with her. He really wasn't in love with any of his wives because he had so many. Nothing compared to Solomon, but where did Solomon learn to have so many wives? From his dad. So he has all these women and concubines, but he wants Michelle. It might have been because he wanted to have revenge for Michelle's dad splitting them up. I mean, Michelle risked her life to save him when she did the fake body in the bed, you know, with the goofy goat hair for the... So it could have been that. It could have been a sign to the nations that we're going to combine these two kingdoms because I'm bringing Saul's daughter back to be my wife. But there's a good chance that Michelle and Paltiel had been married 10 years. That's a long time. And I'm sure that her life with him, though it wasn't like being in part of the kingdom, was a good life because he loved her. She's going to go to David. She was wife number 1 when they were kids. Now when she goes back, she'll be wife number 7 and living in a harem. That can't be good. So I don't know why he wants it. But, and the poor guy, I mean, I just feel for him. Verse 6, I feel for this guy. I mean, you've been with this woman, you're madly in love with her, and then a soldier comes to the door and says, hey, the king wants his wife back. Really? You're going to do this to me? And so he cries all the way. And as she's leaving, he's still bawling. And Abner, the poster child for empathy, says, get out of here. Just go away. Okay. So there we are. You got your reading glasses on? Oh, good. 17 through 19, please.
And Abner conferred with the elders of Israel, saying, for some time past, you have been seeking David as king over you. Now then, bring it about, for the Lord has promised David, saying, by the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and from the hand of all men. Abner also spoke to Benjamin, and then Abner went to tell David at Hebron, all of Israel and the whole house of Benjamin fought to beat him.
Okay. Like in verse 18, this was a revelation for Abner that God had anointed David king over Israel, something that everybody knew for years and years. But okay.
Must have saw it when they were in the wall.
Mary Beth, would you read 20 through 25?
Then Abner and 20 men with him came to David at Hebron, and David made a feast for Abner and his men who were with him. Abner said to David, let me rise and go and gather all Israel to my lord the king, that they may make a covenant with you, and that you may be king over all that your soul desires. So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. And behold, the servants of David and Joab came from a raid and brought much spoil with them. But Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he had gone in peace. Then Joab and all the army that was with him arrived, and he told Joab, saying, Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he has sent him away, and he has gone in peace. Then Joab came to the king and said, what have you done? Behold, Abner came to you, why have you sent him away, and he has already gone? You know, Abner the son of Ner, that he came to deceive you, and to learn of your going out and coming in, and to find out all that you are doing.
Okay. David is only king over Judah and parts of Benjamin. Not a lot of income. So he's got Joab, his commander-in-chief, going to these Bedouin camps, looting and stealing, and that's how they make their money. You could pay taxes or you could just get robbed. Either way, you're going to lose it. So you get this money, and he's come back from a raid, been real successful, and servants, you know, they know everything. Servants know all the secrets in the kingdom. They do, because they're right there, and they're invisible. People talk in front of them because they're nobodies. And so one of the servants says to Joab, "You just missed him. Abner was here. I mean, him and David have kissed and made up. They are just buds now." Joab is hacked. Why is he so mad? Yeah, but why is he so mad that Abner left? There's a... Huh? Why did he not want him to leave alive?
Because Abner's a liar, and he's not gonna do what he said he was gonna do. He's coming in to scout the troops.
Okay,
That's what Joab said.
that's what Joab said, because and Joab really doesn't like Abner, but it goes deeper than that. What's his problem? Joab's brother, Asahel, the fleet-footed one, was killed by Abner. You are going to let that low-lying son of a murderer... Whose side are you on, Dave? Man, Asahel was serving you when that crummy Abner killed him. And you let him live. See, no, David, he's gone from being, you know, innocent shepherd boy. Now he's playing power politics. And he's thinking to himself, you know, it was just one kid. 10 tribes of Israel coming in. Joab says, "What do you mean just one kid? That was my brother." Like I said, one kid. Whew. Joab, you're not thinking right, but he's got a plan. Joe, you're up. Verse 26 through 30.
When Joab came out from David, he sent messengers after Abner. And they brought him back and Joab Sarah. David did not know it. So one day Abner came to see him. Joab took him aside into the meadow of the root to speak with him privately, and there he struck him in the belly, so that he died on account of the blood of Asahel, his brother. Afterward, when David heard, he said, I am my kingdom innocent before the Lord forever of the blood of Abner, the son of Ner. May it fall on the head of Joab and on all his father's house, and may there not fall from the house of Joab one who has a discharge, or who is a leper, or who takes hold of a staff, and who falls upon his sword, or who rots bread. So Joab and Asahel and his brother killed Abner, because he had not put his brother Asahel to death in the battle of Gibeon.
I'm sure all of you at one time or another, even though you are super Christians, I am sure at least once in your life you've watched a movie. This is just like a movie. You know how in those movies they have a villain, and the villain attracts somebody in, and the guy's all like innocent, doesn't know what's going on, and he says, "Sure, I'll come back." Now that we're buds. And so Joab says, David wanted to say one more thing. He forgot. So once you come back And then Dave wants to talk to you. Dave didn't want to talk to him. Dave didn't even know what's going on. So when Abner comes back, Joab says, "Psst, over here in the shadows, in this room where all the chainsaws are hanging. Come over here." Abner, don't go over there. Come back over there, this car, Christine. It's a great car. Just watch this. And Abner falls for it. He goes over, and then it's just so poetic that Joab stabs him in the stomach, because that's where Abner stuck the spear to his brother. Eye for eye. See? Huh?
Stomach for stomach.
Stomach for stomach. David's trying to put a kingdom together here. Abner was representing the 10 northern tribes. Drew, you like to read or not? Okay, good. 31 through 39.
Then David said to Joab and all the people with him, "Tear your clothes and put on sackcloth, and walk in mourning in front of Abner." King David himself walked behind the bier. They buried Abner in
Mm-hmm.
Hebron.
Yep.
And the king wept aloud at Abner's tomb. All the people wept also. The king sang this lament for Abner. Should Abner have died as the lawless died? Your hands were not bound, your feet were not fettered. You fell as one falls before the Lord. And all the people wept over him again. Then they all came and urged David to eat something while it was still day. But David took an oath, saying, "May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if I take bread or anything else before the sun sets." All the people took note and were pleased. Indeed, everything the king did pleased them. So on that day, all the people there and all Israel knew that the king had no part in the murder of Abner, son of Ner. Then the king said to his men, "Do you not realize that a commander and a great man has fallen in Israel this day? And today, though I am the anointed king, I am weak, and these sons of Zeruiah are too strong for me. May the Lord repay the evildoer according to his evil deeds."
Here we get another glimpse of David's creative genius in a moment of, the news came as a shock. And he's able to gather himself and think about perception. So he cries at the funeral. He walks behind the bier. That was like an open casket. They didn't worry too much about rain because they didn't hardly have any. And then they would go to the cemetery and bury it. They put a cloth over him so he didn't get dirt in his face. And they followed him, and he wept all the time, and then he writes a song. The guy is amazing. At the drop of a hat, he can write a song. Whew, man, just like Barry Manilow. He writes the songs that makes the whole world sing, you know? Yeah. And then the people said, you know, Dave, you ought to eat something. You haven't eaten since this morning. And he does a great job of saying, I'm not going to eat anything. Not today. I'm fasting. When the sun goes down, I'll have something to eat. And this is one of the most incredible verses that you're going to read in Scripture because it's not human. I want you to look at this. All the people took note of it, and it pleased them, just as everything the king did pleased how many? Oh, that is amazing. President Trump frees hostages in Israel who had been held for 2 years. Gets a peace accord, and do you think that that's pleased all the people? No. And then you got, if it would have been a Democratic president and he would have done that, then the Republicans would have said, big whoop. People just cannot recognize a good gesture. Somebody's always got to be negative, right? So, he gives these accolades, and the thing about David that makes me know that this is sincere is David had problems with his self-worth. But he didn't have any trouble recognizing a warrior. Abner was his opponent, but he was a soldier. Goliath was his opponent. He was a soldier. David respected him. David called him out because he disrespected his God. But he respected him as a soldier. David could take the opposition, an opponent, an enemy, and if they decided to come to David's side, he would embrace them because he had no problems with ego when it came to soldiers. He's going to have some men in his army that could tear you apart. And they could tear him apart. He didn't fear him. He admired him. And here, Abner, he gives him this accolade, a prince and a great man has fallen this day. And he said, I tell you, as strong as I am in the position I hold, these knuckleheads of Zariah, they're just too much for me. I can't handle it. They're out of control. So, here we go. Tom, you ready?
Sure.
Would you read 1 through 4?
Sure. When Ishbosheth, son of Saul, had heard that Abner had died in Hebron, he lost courage, and all Israel became alarmed. Now Saul's son had 2 men who were leaders of raiding bands. One was named Baanah, and the other Rechab. They were sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite. From the tribe of Benjamin, Beeroth is considered part of Benjamin, because the people of Beeroth fled to Gibeon and had lived there as aliens to this day. Jonathan, son of Saul, had a son who was lame in both feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came to Jezreel. His nurse picked him up and fled. But as she hurried to leave, he fell and became crippled. His name was Mephibosheth.
Okay. You might wonder, what in the world we got these 4 verses in here for? What does that have to do with their story? It has a lot to do with the story. Ishbosheth, his name means man of shame. Wow, that's the kind of leader you want. I know, let's elect a man of shame. We can all rally behind him. Ishbosheth was weak. He was the fourth son of Saul, and he didn't have any kids. Jonathan had a child. He would have been next in line, heir to the throne, but he was crippled in both of his feet. His name was Mephibosheth. So Israel, the 10 tribes, because they're rattled by this, these men from Judah killed Abner, the leader of the 10 tribes. So they're all shook up. The 10 tribes don't know what to do because the 2 Saulites, the Bosheths, one is weak, the other one is crippled. So you got these 2 guys. They were kind of like, after Abner, they were next in line, military. But they're not Jews. They're Beerothites. And the reason that they were absorbed into Benjamin is when Moses was leading Israel through the wilderness, just before they got to the River Jordan, he had instructed them, and Joshua carried this out, when you get into the land that's been promised to you, you are to destroy all the inhabitants. Men, women, children, everything. They're all diseased, they're all criminals, they're all sinners. I've put a judgment on that whole group of people. Destroy them all. When Joshua started in, they did that. But as time went on, the men of Israel got tired of fighting. And some of these Canaanite tribes, they couldn't defeat. So they turned them into slaves. The Beerothites were one of those tribes. They were affiliated with the Hittites, the Hivites. So for years, they were slaves to the Israelites. And all of a sudden, not because because Samuel said so or God said so, but Saul decided, you know what? I remember back in my history that God wanted all the Hivites destroyed. So I'm going to do it. Well, he wasn't successful, but he killed a lot of them. These 2 commanders are looking at the Bosheths. One's weak, one's crippled, and they're remembering, you know, their dad, their grandpa, was the one that tried to annihilate us. They called it ethnic cleansing. We hate that guy. See how those 4 verses come to play? Because now, who's next? Tim, Kim, you. Read verses 5 through 12. Yeah, you're our reader tonight.
So the sons of Hanan, the Beerothite, Rechab and Baanah, departed and came to the house of Ishbosheth in the heat of the day while he was taking his midday rest. They came to the middle of the house as if to get meat, and they struck him in the belly, and Rechab and Baanah, his brother, escaped. And when they came into the house, as he was lying on his bed in his bedroom, they struck him and killed him and beheaded him. And they took his head and traveled by way of the Arabah all night. Then they brought the head of Ishbosheth to David at Hebron and said to the king, Behold, the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, your enemy, who sought your life. Thus the Lord has given my lord the king vengeance this day on Saul and his descendants. David answered Rechab and Baanah, his brother, sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite, and said to them, Is
So these two non-Israelites get this idea, we really hate Saul because he tried to kill us, so let's kill him. They wait till he takes his nap, which is a crummy time to attack anybody. Man, wait till their nap is over. That's just rotten. I hate it when the phone rings while I'm taking my nap. Man, just wait. So they go in and they not just kill him, but they cut off his head. Now, why in the world did they cut off his head?
Trophy?
A trophy of sorts.
Proof of death.
Proof of death. And they have this great idea. I know, as proof of death, we'll take his head and we'll take it to David and we'll say, look what God did. God killed your enemy. Now, Dave, you have no more roadblocks. You're king of everybody because everybody else is gone. Can't you just see as they're walking up, holding the head of Bosheth and just smiling from ear to ear because, oh boy, are they ever going to get a reward? David is going to be so grateful. Who knows? He might give him part of his kingdom. David looks at that head, he looks at those two, and he said, mistake, big mistake. The last time somebody did that, I killed him. And guess what? I'm killing you. So he had two guys come in, they killed, chopped off his head, and then they took his hands and feet and strung them up on a wall. I don't know why. They took Ishbosheth's head and buried it with Abner in his tomb. Okay. Have you read that yet, Sally? You haven't? Okay, read 1 through 5, please. He might not have had to have waited so long had he not done a couple of things early, and he never talked to God about it. In fact, he disobeyed God. When he was at the cave of Adullam, God said, I want you to stay in Israel. Don't worry about Saul. He's not going to harm you. I didn't anoint you king for him to kill you, so just stay in Israel. But David freaked, and he went down to Gath. Got in cahoots with Achish, the Philistine king. And I mean, Israel wasn't quite sure what David was doing, whether he was a traitor, he changed sides. And of course, then there was the deal with Abner where he embarrassed him in front of everybody when he took Saul's spear and his water jug and called Abner by name. But anyways, it finally comes and now he's the king. He doesn't want to stay in Hebron. He wants to go to Jerusalem. I don't know how much of history he knows, but before it was Jerusalem, before it was called Jebus, it was called the Mount of God, because that's where Abraham took Isaac to sacrifice him on that mount. That's where David wants his kingdom, right there. But they're occupied by another group. Aaron, I'm so glad you're back. Would you read verses? Oh, these are great too. You don't have to read all the names. Once you get to 13, you can quit. Read verses 6 through 13.
Now the king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Israelites. But they accepted them, and they said to David, "You shall not come in here, that even those who are blind and those who lame will turn you away. Indeed, David cannot serve you." Nevertheless, David captured the stronghold of Zion, that is, the city of David, and David said on that day, "Whoever strikes the Jebusites is to reach those who lame and those who are blind, who are hated by David's sword, through the water tunnel." For that reason they said, "People who are blind and people who live shall not come into the house." So David lived in the stronghold and called it the city of David, and David dwelt all around from the Milo and inward. David became great and greater, for the Lord God of armies was with him. Then Hiram the Harrier sent messengers to David, "The cedar tree is carpenters and stonemasons, and they built a house for David." And David realized that the Lord had appointed him as king over Israel, and that he exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people Israel. Meanwhile, David took north concubines and wives from Jerusalem, after he came from Hebron, and more sons and daughters were born to David.
Very good. The people of Jebus were pretty complacent, confident, arrogant. They looked down. The way Jerusalem, that whole area is a mountain range. Get it? Isaac, Abraham went up the mountain to sacrifice. The whole thing is mountainous. Where Jerusalem sat at that time was near the top of a peak. And there was only one way up it. The rest of it was too steep to climb. So the inhabitants of Jebus would look over the wall about 400 feet down and they'd say, "You guys can't come up here. All we need are lame and blind people to guard this." Lame and blind, are you kidding me? But that's what they said. When we take lame and blind, so David says, "Go up there." I want all the lame and blind men to take off. They went up and they got it, and they made it their kingdom, and it was the city of David ever since. This is where it started. And when he became that king and got the city of Jerusalem, Hiram, king of Tyre, he said, "I want to build you a house because I've got some great carpenters. They use cedar trees from Lebanon." And they didn't really build David a house, even though it says that in verse 11. They made him a palace. I'm building a house. David built a palace. There's a big difference. Okay, Pauline, you're up. 17 through 25.
When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, they went up in full force to search for him. But David heard about it and went down to the stronghold. Now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. So David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go and attack the Philistines? Will you hand them over to me?" The Lord answered him, "Go, for I will surely hand the Philistines over to you." So David went to Baal-perazim, and there he defeated them. He
soon as you hear the sound of marching in, the tops of the balsam trees move quickly, because they, excuse me, because that will mean the Lord has gone out in front of you, or of to strike the Philistines, the army. So David did as the Lord had commanded, and he struck down the Philistines all the way from Gibeon to Gazer.
I don't know if these were Philistines who had spent time with David when he was at Achish or what. But they're not remembering the David from the days of Goliath. Because that David was a stone-cold killer. I mean, he wasn't afraid of anything. He'd been anointed king. He was impregnable. He was immortal. He was impossible for him to die, and he would just go in. He had men with him that could kill hundreds of men by themselves. And when he becomes king, the Philistine says, I know, let's go attack David.
All the smart ones in the last generation.
Yeah, I think so. The smart ones retired after Gilboa. They said, we killed Saul, we're done. But David now has a moment of saneness, and he says, you know what? Before I go into fight, I'm going to ask God about this. And he says to God, should I go? I mean, am I going to win? God says, smoke them. And that's what he did. I mean, like water that breaks out. You ever seen that where water's just building up pressure and it as soon as there's any kind of a leak, just whoosh. And that's how that was. And the Philistines said, man, we really got beat bad. Let's go do it again. And so they do. And this time, David says, what are you about it, God? And God says, no. You know, you guys had all the fun the first time. This time, let me at it. He said, I want you to go behind the trees, and not when you hear the wind going through the trees. Did you catch that in those verses? Not when you hear the wind going through the trees. When you hear the marching going through the trees. Guess what that marching was? The hosts of Israel going before David and his men. They wiped out the Philistines before David could ever get to them. I said, man, oh man, these guys are falling like flies. They heard the marching of the hosts of the Lord. Angels. Wow. That would have been awesome to see. You just look out there and the enemy is just falling down. Okay, Amy, you ready?
Sure.
Good. Chapter 6. And read the first 5 verses, please.
Now David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him to Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name, the very name of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned above the cherubim. They placed the ark of God on a new cart, that they might bring it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, and Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were leading the new cart. So they brought it with the ark of God from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, and Ahio was walking ahead of them. Meanwhile, David and all the house of Israel were celebrating before the Lord with all kinds of instruments made of fir wood, and with lyres, harps, tambourines, castanets, and cymbals.
Yes. Where they left the ark. It had been there 75 years. It got abandoned by the inhabitants of Israel when they opened it up and people started dying like the Raiders of the Lost Ark. They looked in the ark. Faces started melting off, all kinds of weird things. 75 years it had been there. The tabernacle was in Gibeon, where Saul's headquarters were. So you've got the tabernacle here and the Ark of the Covenant, which is where God dwelt. For 75 years, people were going to the tabernacle and God was over here. That's how warped they were. They didn't even understand it. David says, let's bring them together. And people said, well, how are we going to get it from there to up there? And he said, well, the Philistines moved it the first time. How did they do it? How did the Philistines move it? They used oxen, but what kind of cart did they have? One with wheels. Okay, I'll give you that. A new cart that had never been used. Remember, the Philistines said, we got to get this out of here. It's killing our people. So they put it on a new cart. Now, David didn't take any golden mice or hemorrhoids or anything like that that the Philistines used. But they put it on this new cart, and away they go. Are there any Levites out there, is what David should have said. Hey, we're going to move the cart. Are there any Levites out there? He didn't ask. So away they go. Away they go. Oh, Holly, I'm so glad you're here. Would you read verses 6 through 11, please?
But when they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out toward the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen nearly upset it. And the anger of the Lord burned against Uzzah, and God struck him down there for his irreverence. And he died there by the ark of God. David became angry because of the Lord's outburst against Uzzah, and that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. So David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, how can the ark of the Lord come to me? And David was unwilling to move the ark of the Lord into the city of David with him. But David took it aside to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. Thus the ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household.
We're going to go into this more. But here you've got a guy, Uzzah, a Levite. He was really concerned. He loved the Lord. He was a servant of the Lord. And when he saw that ark, the most precious piece of furniture in all of Israel, looked like it was going to fall. He jumped, reached to steady it, and died just like that. We're going to talk about that next week. But verse 11, that's what we'll end with. David's afraid, so he leaves it with Obed-Edom. Obed-Edom isn't sure what to do with it, but he has it sitting on his property, and all of a sudden he starts winning every single lottery he plays. I mean, he's got the 472 million jackpot. He's got the 395 million jackpot. I mean, he is just rolling in dough. That's what we'll come to next week.
What's a Gittite?
Huh?
What's a Gittite?
It was part of the Philistines. So that was the Philistine area.
So is it